Hello, good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you might be. A big welcome to you all. My name is Sean, and I'm delighted that you are joining us for today's ESPC community webinar. Today I'm joined by Gokhan, Microsoft RD and MVP, who will cover increased productivity with Power Apps in Microsoft Teams. We love hearing what you guys have to say, so remember to join in on the conversation about today's webinar and more on X. Our handle is at ESPC_community, and our hashtag is hashtag ESPC24. Tweet us, tag us, and tell us what you learned. Don't forget to check out our Learning Hub, which is updated daily with the latest blogs, ebooks, webinars, and how-to videos. You can access and view the Learning Hub by visiting our website, sharepointeurope.com, and clicking the Content tab at the top. Don't let the learning stop here. Continue to keep up and stay ahead by joining us for our next webinar. Create and populate Excel fast via Graph or Office scripts with Damien Bird. This webinar is the third webinar of Microsoft Power Platform Week and takes place this evening, Tuesday, March 26th from 5 p.m. to 6 p.m. CET. For more information on this webinar, please check out sharepointeurope.com/Power Platform Week. Attention to all individuals considering attending the European Power Platform Conference. Our exclusive super early bird promotion will conclude tomorrow, Wednesday at midnight, March 27th. From Thursday, March 28th onwards, ticket prices will be subject to an increase. Seize this final chance to capitalize on this current offer. Seize your spot today by visiting www.sharepointeurope.com/European Power Platform Conference pricing. After this webinar, we'll have a questions and answers session. Type any questions you might have into the questions window. Questions will be selected and answered at the end of the presentation. This webinar will be recorded and added to the Resource Center, where you'll be notified by email when it is available. And now, I'm going to pass you over to today's webinar presenter, Gokhan. Hello, Gokhan. Thanks for joining us today.
Hello, good morning, good afternoon, everyone. I'm gonna share the camera. I'm going to share my screen and let me know if you can see everything perfectly.
Yeah, I can see your screen, Gokhan.
Oh, okay, fantastic. So, welcome, bonjour, hello, shalom, salam, buongiorno, buenos dias, guten morgen, guten tag, in any language. Welcome to everyone. Welcome to this ESPC webinar called Increase Productivity with Power Apps in Microsoft Teams. The whole idea about this session is to give you insights around Power Apps and how you could use Power Apps within Microsoft Teams. We know that Microsoft is investing a lot of energy, time, and money to bring Power Apps to the next level so end users, power users can build their own tools without having IT input within their environment. And this session is meant to show you how you can easily build your application and share that application across Microsoft Teams. You have multiple ways, and today, within 45-50 minutes, my own goal is to show you how you can share this in Microsoft Teams. This session is an advanced session. I'm gonna say it's like a 200 session, so it is a demo-centric, and all materials will be provided. So you will have the slide deck. I'm gonna send it over to ESPC, and they will send over the slides to you as well, so you can absolutely have a look on the recording as well on the slides. But you need to know a little bit about Power Apps and Microsoft Teams. So you need to know what the environment is. You need to know what the Copilot is. You need to know how you could use apps and so on and so on. So it's not really a level 1, but I'm probably gonna say it's like a 200, something between 200 and 300 level. My name is Gokhan Ozifsi. Ozifsi, extremely complicated and complex, so stick only with Gokhan. I'm from Brussels, Belgium, lovely country where we only have 2 days of sunny weather. It's mainly raining, and that's the reason why I'm in love with Montreal, Canada. My biggest and wildest dream was to move to Canada, but the thing is, my wife hates snow. So that's not going to be possible, unfortunately. I'm a retired writer. I've been writing a lot of books and ebooks on TechNet to TechNet wikis, um, even paper. But with the digital era, I stopped writing those books. I've been founding multiple communities across continents, as well as organizing conferences in France, in Belgium, in Istanbul, Turkey, and so on and so on. An international speaker. I've been mainly speaking at major conferences and talking about my preferred topics, which are Microsoft Teams, SharePoint Premium, aka Syntax, Power Apps, and I try to make funny jokes, but they're not always that good. So that's the reason why you will see like a little arrow which says I'm very bad at jokes, but I'll try to make it as funny as possible, so that 45 minutes will pass as an ease. So this is the most classic slide ever that you will see about the Power Platform. You will see that you have the 5 major artifacts, which I need to update probably, which because the Power Virtual Agents are now called Copilot Studio. But for those who are not aware of that, well, you have 5 major artifacts: the Power BI, Power Apps, Power Automate, the Copilot Studio, and Power Pages. But what I really like to show to my customers is this one. This is the real image that we should show about the Power Platform. Power Platform is a whole platform that is not only meant for every kind of developer, like the low code, not only for business users and power users, but it's also meant for pro developers. The line between the pro developer and the every developer is extremely small. Anyone can today start building an application, right? Um, and it would be a big lie if you say today, I can build an app without a single line of code. In many cases, well, you have to use line of codes. You have to have that developer mindset in order to make your application looking beautiful, working smoothly. It's not an easy task. So yes, Power Platform is meant for the every developer, like for the low code platform, but you have a bunch of other tools that will help the pro developers to build their applications. For today's session, well, one thing that we will actually have a look is where should be your data. And this is fundamental for every project you will start, because the data, well, it could be like anywhere, and that anywhere is defined by connectors. Today, we have more than 1,000 connectors for our data, so you could go internally as well as externally Microsoft, right? We have more than 1,000 connectors available, even for SharePoint Server. Like if you still have data on premises, well, you could use the data gateways to bring your data to your tenant and mesh up that data and use that data. The most important and what we will focus today is the Dataverse as well as Dataverse for Teams. Dataverse, which is today's or the former CDS, which is like a service that gives you on top of Power Platform where you can save your data. And then you also have the same, which is like a smaller version for Teams. And then you also have the Office 365 apps for OneDrive, SharePoint Online, and Mail, and so on. But connectors, very important. And tomorrow, when you will start your projects, those are from all the projects I've been doing within Power Apps, those are the facts that you need to discuss with anyone in the organization, from external sharing to the center of excellence, to performance, to pricing, to security, and so on. But 2 things are very important: the governance as well as the storage. The storage is going to play a very big role in any project you would have with Power Apps. And today we're going to see that. Because any decision you take will actually make the route on where you should go. When you talk with your customers, partners, internal stakeholders, well, everyone has a different way on doing stuff and building stuff. And If you have an organization with a bunch of makers, well, those makers could be a perfect scenario for the common business processes. But if you have a lot of pro developers in your organization, well, you could use the Power Platform complex processes. If you have an ecosystem which should be outside of Microsoft, well, you could go for Dynamics, you could go for X, Y, Z, or if you have people only using the Microsoft apps, well, you could use the Microsoft World as connectors and bring data and consume data. It is extremely important for you, whenever you start a Power Apps project, to discuss with those people, to understand what kind of people you have in the organization and know which way you should go. Dataverse, for those who don't know, is actually Project Dataflex or Oakdale or CDS. It has had a lot of names, but Microsoft made a lot of changes to Dataverse. They made it extremely simple. They changed names such as tables, columns, and choices from entities, fields, and so on. So they want to really get rid of those CDS and Dynamics era to something that everyone could understand. And that's the reason why today within Dataverse we have tables and not anymore entities, or columns and not fields, right? And what you need to know just for that session is Dataverse was even there before the cloud era, or before even the Microsoft M365 or Power Platform era. You can see, like in 2003, they had the MS CRM, then they went to Dynamics CRM and so on. And Dataflex only started with Power Apps. We had CDS from 2018 to 2020, but Dataflex, the one that we know as Dataverse today, well, it started with Power Apps. And then we had in 2022 the Dataverse for Teams. So what's the difference? The biggest difference is that Dataverse for Teams doesn't have full functionality. That's what you need to know. Dataverse is a premium functionality which has all the functionalities. Dataverse for Teams has not all the functionalities. After all the demos I'm going to show you, I also have like a comparison table that will explain you what the difference is between Dataverse and Dataverse for Teams. A few examples. Dataverse has non-relational storage, but Dataverse for Teams does not. Dataverse has API access and plugins. However, Dataverse for Teams does not. And the biggest, I'm not going to call it issue, but the drawback is with Dataverse for Teams, everything is restricted to the team owner, member, and guest. So if you want to use that app which is connected to your team, well, you have to be part of that team. And if you delete that team, well, the app is going to be deleted as well. Now, that was a lot of talk. So let's now go for a demo and show you how you can build your app, how you can bring that app to life, and how you can go actually with Microsoft Teams. So let me here stop this and then go to that specific URL. So the only thing that you need to know as brand new Power Apps user, consumer, developer, power user is make.powerapps.com. So that's the URL that will help you building applications, because that's the entry point, that's the central point of building your application. And the first thing that you need always to check, no matter if you're a newbie or a pro developer, is you have to make sure in which environment you are. So the admins can create a lot of environments just for you or for your businesses, right? The one thing I like to mention here, that if you build an app in the default environment, well, anyone can have access to that environment because the default one is open to anyone. If you want to restrict your application to a specific business unit or a specific unit into your organization, well, you have to ask for a specific environment, and then you can limit access to them. And that's what I did. I said, I want to have an environment which is called Power Platform Week, ESPC, and I want to build my application into that. Bear in mind that environments are limited to storage. You have to pay for it if you overconsume, but just, you can create environments and build your environments into those, and then specific that for people. Now that we are in the correct environment, I can here use Copilot and tell Copilot to build an application for me, which is like the next level of building applications. Let's say, build me, build me an app for Pokemon card TCG inventory. And let's say we are happy with that. I want to build an app that is simply for my cards. I want to know what kind of card do I have? Is it valuable? And I let Copilot handle that. So Copilot is going to check in the backend. And there we go. He already have some table for me with a column called card ID, card name, about the rarity, about the type, about the set, and about the quantity. Phenomenal. I can rename this, or I can on the right side even go with Copilot and say, hey, add a column called description, right? I can just say that. If I'm not happy with how Copilot handles this, I can just say that to Copilot, which is, by the way, for free, Copilot in Power Platform. It's not like the M365 where you have to pay for it. And you will see that it added a brand new column for me called description. The only bad thing with that, if I may say, is that it by default uses Dataverse. It creates a table for you, so you don't have the chance to specify the source you want. So if I like to use SharePoint or SQL or a list or XYZ, you don't have the option to choose. Therefore, probably for the next releases, but from now on, you only may use Dataverse. I'm going to click on Create App, and what's now going to happen is that Power Apps will, based on my Copilot input, create that app just for me. In a couple of seconds, that app should appear. There we go. It's building my Canvas apps. Come on. There we go. I'm going to just close that Copilot preview pane. We don't want to use Copilot anymore. We use it for building our app. And now Power Apps, as you can see, he has the name because that's the text I did give in my Copilot. And my app will be built in a couple of seconds. And that's the bad thing with doing only demos and no screenshots. It can take up some time, and I have to, find some sentences and not have like a 2-minute blank time. Come on. There we go. Now I have my application, which is just here. I have like the new button. I have like the columns I had. Fantastic. Let's say that you're very happy with your app and that's the kind of app you want to use. What you can do is you can save this, and that will then be saved into your Power Platform Week environment. And if I now go to my make.powerapps.com site again, under the environments, well, I can open that environment and see all kinds of apps I do have. If I come just here, my apps, I'm again into the correct environment. And now you will see all the kinds of apps I have. And you will see that 27 or 28 seconds ago, I did build an app. Phenomenal. That's your app. So that's the basic that we have. If you click on the 3 dots, well, you can go under details. And if you see under details, well, you have 2 things that are fundamental for us to see and understand. You have the app ID and then the web link. And we will need both of them in order to bring them into SharePoint as well in Teams. Now, if I go to my Teams environment and go to my prod, well, you will see in my channel production, I have the posts, files, and notes tabs. I can easily click on add a tab here, and then Microsoft Teams will propose me from the store all kind of connectors, apps. Remember, I told you had like more than 1,000 connectors, apps that you could use. Well, I can use any of them if there is no restriction from IT. Remember that IT can, via the Teams Admin Center, block any app or allow every app. It all depends on how they want to build their policies, but that's possible. If I now click on Power Apps just here, well, you will see that Microsoft Teams will propose me a few questions about what kind of app I want to show just here. I can search from here. I can filter with my apps, all apps, or even go for model-driven apps. I can go for the sample apps, right? Those from Power Apps itself. But I, want to show the one that's in my app. And the thing is, it will go across all the environments you have. Like you can see, I have like a Digimon card inventory, which is part of the Power Platform Week ESPC, but I do have another one for education, but that's part of the Neoxy 365 default environment. So no matter in which environment you do create, those will appear into that list. So I'm going to choose this one, the one that we brandly created, and then click on Save. And now within a couple of seconds, well, that app that we just created into our Power App will just come here. And boom, the one that we just created a couple of seconds ago is now appearing into our Microsoft Teams. Well, that means that I don't have to install the Power app on my mobile device, or I don't have to remember if I'm a simple end user which has to use one of those in-house built Power Apps. I don't care anymore about where the application is. I don't have to go and save that URL somewhere into my notebook, or if my manager did send that via email to me, I don't have to search into my email. No, I can easily come here and in any tab, I can add that Power Apps connector and then connect it to my app. And I can do this for any kind of application I have in my environment. So if I just click here, again, choose for Power App, I can easily go for another application. So I could have a channel, which is like automation or process automation, and I could have multiple Power Apps into that channel. So if I choose for, let's say, this one, which is like a default environment, right? So two different environments, I'm gonna click on Save, and now Power Apps, no matter where the data is saved in one or another environment, it will bring the application to me. Well, at least if I have access to. And that's all the power of the connector within Microsoft Teams. It will bring you the application on your mobile device, as well as your Teams client, as well as in the web. So you don't have to search for it, you don't have to look for it. It's gonna be all easily accessible for you. Now, is this the only way? Well, no, you have multiple other ways to do that. Well, one of the things I really love is if you go to the Files tab, just here, I'm gonna open the Files tab. We all know that it is SharePoint, right? Every team that we create in M365 will automatically provision a SharePoint site because they have a one-to-one relation. Every file that you store in Teams is basically stored in SharePoint. And if for some reason your SharePoint has an issue, well, your Teams will have an issue because Teams is only a container from the SharePoint framework, right? And if I open this, well, you will see that within SharePoint, well, it has the same name as my team, because they're connected, right? Neoxy, Power Platform Week, ESPC. If I check here, it's the same. Neoxy, Power Platform Week, ESPC. Fantastic. Under any page, I could create a custom page, or I could modify the home page. If you click on Edit, well, here you can add a web part. When I edit my page, you will see I have multiple web parts. I can click on it. I can even add a section. I can modify my section, right? And here under the plus, if I look for Power Apps, and the bad thing with that, honestly, is this has been in preview for ages now, like for ages since day one. And I have no idea why Microsoft still keeps it in preview. If you click on it, well, it will tell you, Gökhan, well, I need the app web or the ID. Remember I told you when we did create our first app, we went to the details. I said we will need that. Well, that one is especially needed for SharePoint. If I come back here under my app that we created, well, you can see the web link or you can see the app ID. So I'm going to use the app ID. I'll come back to my SharePoint just here, and I'll put the app ID just there. And what you now will see is within my SharePoint, that application will be loaded in a couple of seconds. And I can make this bigger so it fits the screen, right? Like this. I can show the border. So that's the only option you have. You can make it bigger and you can just show the border. So basically that's the option. My wish is I would love to have more options, like I like to add conditional formatting on it. I like to have some security on that, and so on and so on. But apparently, it's only showing the border. And hopefully, if someone is from Microsoft just here, hopefully they can also take that feedback. If I republish this on the home page, what you're now going to see is within my SharePoint, that app is going to be loaded. Well, you might tell yourself, what does this have to do with Teams? Well, a lot. What we could do is we can definitely take this URL, come back to our environment, and click on that plus again. If you are not a big fan of the Power Up app or the Power Up connector and you want to show more than only your app, you can build a beautiful SharePoint site, add the app in the center with a beautiful title with maybe explanations and recommendations and best practices. And then you can just click here for SharePoint. And now I can, within my Teams environment, come here and say, oh, I like to show this. I like to show the home. I like to show the news. Those are the ones that are connected to your group. But if you have like any other SharePoint site, because that app could be on a SharePoint site which is not group connected, well, you can paste it here. So I can easily just copy and paste that here, or I can just use the home, which is just here. And you can see it has been modified a minute ago. Remember, I added the Power Apps web part, and now I can just see it here. So if I click on it and say save, a new tab will be opened for me in my Teams environment. And now I have like multiple ways on going to my app. I can use the Power app, or I can now use the SharePoint app. If that's gonna be added, it's setting up. So come on. I use this one just to make things easier. There we go. And now I have my site, which is SharePoint. And now what you're gonna see is my app is also opened from my SharePoint. And this is the beauty of M365 working perfectly with Power Apps, is because no matter if it's in Teams or in SharePoint, you can see your app from both ways. What's really fantastic with this is you can also share this and add this to a team. If you say add this to Teams, well, here, if I click on add to Teams, well, that app will then be deployed as an app to my app store. If I click now on add, well, that application will now be part of my Teams environment. Oh, something went wrong. But yeah, that app will be part of my environment, and I can easily go from the apps segment here and look for that app. So that's a possibility as well. Let me retry it one more time, and I have no clue idea why it failed. So let me just try again. Oh, good, nothing. And I guarantee you it was working like yesterday. So no, I don't know why this is not working, but let's maybe, instead of adding it to a team, let's add this to a chat. I can add this to a chat. I have a lot of people where I work with together, and I can say, okay, instead of adding this to a team, let's add this to a chat. And I have like a group with Captain Jack Sparrow and so on. I'm gonna click here and then say set up tab. Hopefully this time this was not gonna fail. Please. Oh my goodness. For some reason, apparently from the admin center, I have an issue, but that's no big worry because I told you yesterday I made a test and you can see that app is actually appearing into my chat. So you can add this into a tab into your Teams environment, but you can also add this into a chat. So if you want to use a specific app which is only for you and your colleague or only for a specific subset of people, well, you can definitely also go into your chat and add this to your chat, and people from that chat can use that app. So that all is possible. Now, one thing that I didn't on purpose show you is the following. This one. The fact that you are using Dataverse makes it automatically a premium licensing model. You have to pay for it. There is no other choice. Dataverse is not for free. Well, remember in my session earlier, I said you can have it for free if you use not the full version. And how you use that without having the full version? Well, therefore, you again have to go to your environment, in your Teams environment, and instead of playing around with the Teams, well, you have to click on Power Apps. So I'm not going anymore to make.powerapps.com. I'm just here within my Teams environment and clicking on Power Apps. The fact is, now we are creating our Power App from Microsoft Teams. Hence, that will help us building our Dataverse for Teams environment. By default, when your environment is new, so if your Teams environment is new, well, you have to click on Start Now. This will trigger the process of creating a Dataverse for Teams environment for your team. And I'm going to show that to you. Here I have 3 Teams environments, Teams team, and you have to basically select the one that you want to use and then click on create. I'm not going to do that because I did it yesterday. It's taking like 5 to 10 minutes in order to properly create the Dataverse for Teams environment. And you can basically, if you click on build on the next tab, well, you can see if the Dataverse is created for you. The first one is using the premium version. The second one is using the premium version. But the last one here, the Power Platform Week, is not using the premium version and it's Dataverse for Teams. If the create didn't work, well, you won't be able to see your teams here. The fact that I see my teams here means that Dataverse for Teams is now created for me. And normally, if I just come here into my Power Platform admin, I go to environments. Well, you can see here that this is the default environment, the default. The Power Platform is a trial, and the ESPC week is a Microsoft Teams. So that's the type. This is a Microsoft Teams type, meaning this is Dataverse for Teams. And again, in order to have that, you have to click on Start, select your environment, and then create that environment. And once that's done, well, you will be able to see your environment just here. Once you see your environment, well, you can easily come here and say, okay, I'd like to build an app. When you click on that, well, one thing that you will notice is you are not leaving the Microsoft Teams environment. You stay within the Microsoft Teams environment, and within the Teams environment, well, you get the Power Apps components where you can build your app. So let's call this ESPC Power Platform Week Goken. Very long name. I'm going to click on Save. So this is like one of the things, like it's in read only. Don't really care about that because this is going to disappear when the saving will be done. It's one of those messages that scares people, but at the end, it doesn't do anything because when the saving is done, look, it's coming on edit mode. Here, let's build an app. I can easily come here and see for my data sources. I can create a new table. Just here, let's create a table, blank one. And let's build our Dataverse for Teams table. So this is my column. I'm going to edit this. I'm going to call it, like, let's say, first name. This is a single line of text. This could be an email, a text area. Very simple, very basic, nothing too complicated. I'll go for text and say update. I'm going to add a second one. This is going to say last name. We can go for, yeah, a single line of text is good. Or we can just choose, yeah, let's use single line of text, and make this required too. And then I'm going to just add the last one, which is like age or something like that, very simple, and go for a number and then say a whole number and then click on save. You can edit the properties. If you click on it, you can change the name of your table. You can have like the advanced option for the schema name and so on. I'm not going to deep dive into how you can build your table, but that's basically it. I'm going to just change this and say ESPC Power Platform Week Goken, and then click on save. Now I can fill in this with data, Goken, positive C, and say I'm only 18 years old. Let's say here, Julia White, and she's only 22 years old, and so on and so on. Very simple data into my database for Teams. And the bad thing with Power Apps is what you see is what you get. It is not because you created a table that it will for you do anything. You have to tell Power Apps what to do. Now he has our table. Now we have to say to him, hey, well, I like to go with a table just here. And is this the one that no, that's not the one that we created, right? We said ESPC. ESPC. For some reason it called reverse entities. Let's go for this. Let's see what it is. So if you select with data, it will then for you build the app and then make a connection to that Dataverse table. And you will see that he will add for you a new button. It will add the delete option. It will add the edit option. And then you can start building your application. This is because we said we want to go with data. If you had chosen to go with layout, then you would be able to add the button and then your gallery and so on and so on. So you can easily just come here, add the blank screen as a second one, and then just say, I like to go with layout. And you can just choose for split screen as an example. And here on this one, well, you can click on plus and then just say, hey, I like to add a button. And that button will be just for you here. And then you can start building your application. And then, when you click on it, you can select like the on select. The on select. There we go. If you do on select, well, I can easily say, hey, when I select here, well, I'd like you to navigate to screen 1, right? And I can close this. And every time when I click on play, well, it will start on page 2. If I click on that button, well, it goes to my screen 1. So I can easily start building that application within Dataverse for Teams. It's not that complex, but you definitely need to know what you do with the functions and with the formulas and with Dataverse and so on and so on. Take the example that this is it, that you love that application. Well, here, the only thing to do remains is publish this to Teams. When you say save this to Teams, well, it will say, Goken, do you love the name? Because this is the one that's going to appear into your Teams environment. You can give it a description, or you can click on next if you love what it is. And then it will ask you the fundamental question of where do you want to see that app in your Teams environment? I like to go within my ESPC because that's the one where we did provision Dataverse for Teams. I like to click on the prod. I like to see that in production. I'll click, save, and close. And now within a couple of seconds, well, that app will be saved into my Teams environment. I'm going to click on back. I will leave. And then I'm going to just make sure that I can see the app. Yes, 41 seconds ago that was created. That's a Canvas app. I'm coming to my Teams. I'm coming to my production, and what you will see is I have a new tab, and if I click on it, well, you will see that the app that we brandly created will appear in a couple of seconds in my Teams environment. It's loading, and boom. Well, you see Gokun Ozefsi, Julia White with the age, they all appear into my Teams environment. So we had multiple ways of building our application, from Power Apps and show it with the Power Apps connector. We could even add this into SharePoint and bring SharePoint into it. One thing that you can also do is you can, from this URL, also show this into your Teams environment. Something that I didn't really show to you is you can just click on plus again and go for website, or there we go, website, and then just select the URL just here and click on save. So Microsoft provides you a bunch of ways to showcase your Power App within your environment. Could be Dataverse, Dataverse for Teams, could be a SharePoint list, could be a Canvas app, could be a model-driven app. Teams is the perfect spot to host your application. Now you might wonder yourself, what's the difference? And therefore I'm gonna stop with the demo and just come back here. So what's the difference? And those are all the differences that you will see when you have to choose between Dataverse and Dataverse for Teams. And let me now take my laser pointer, because it is very important to know. Dataverse basically has all of it, right? But if you go for Dataverse for Teams, like, you will get the basic data types, but the advanced data types, as well as the non-relational storage, like the logs, or the mobile offline, or not there for you. One of the things why people or why organizations choose for Dataverse is because you have that option for having offline capabilities, right? An example, if your CEO needs to use an app, and but he planes a lot and travels a lot, well, Dataverse could be an option to use your app because it supports mobile offline. You could use that. If you look to the storage limitation, and remember what I told you, one of the things you need to discuss when you create your app is about storage. For Dataverse environments, well, you can have unlimited environments, but again, it's quoted with the storage. You here can have in your Dataverse up to 4 terabyte or more on data. But if you look to Dataverse for Teams, well, you may only have one per team. So you may only have one environment per team, meaning that if you want to have a second Dataverse for Teams in your team, well, that's not possible. You have to create a new teams, and from that, build a new Dataverse for Teams environment. And there is also a big limitation in size. You can go up to 1 million of rows or 2 gigabyte of data. So it is not like have to reach both of them. No, it's one of them. And that's the limit. There is no way on increasing that limit. There is, well, one way on how you can do that. Well, you can upgrade to Dataverse for Teams. Microsoft provides you a way on to do that. And let me show that to you. I'm gonna just cancel this. And if you go to the environment here, if you select your Dataverse for Teams environment, well, you have the option to upgrade. If you click on it, well, it starts a little wizard, says upgrade to Dataverse for Teams. If you click on next, and I know that this is permanent, and when you click on it, boom, the wizard will take you to the screen where this is now being upgraded from Dataverse for Teams to Dataverse. It's all possible, which now means that now you don't have the limitation of the 1 million rows or 2 gigabyte. You can go up to 4 gigabyte. A good recommendation from me is, if you don't know where the storage went because it's a brand new project, or you have no real guidelines or requirements from your business, always start with Dataverse for Teams, because you have the option to upgrade. If you remain below 2 gigabyte or 1 million row, fair, it's free. use it. But if you have to go more than that, well, you can always upgrade to Dataverse. From a security perspective, again, it's almost the same. Dataverse for Teams has nothing. Dataverse, the full version, has almost everything. If I look for the integration feature, only Power Automate looks okay for Dataverse for Teams. However, if you want to use Azure functionalities, if you want to use Azure Events Hub, webhooks, SQL Server Management Studio, record sharing, none of them are possible with Dataverse for Teams. And that's what I mean with not every functionality is available for you. A quick recap. Some of the benefits of Dataverse for Teams includes there is an export functionality available for you with Excel, a new visual editor. It's included in almost all Microsoft Teams licenses, and there is support for 5 teams plus 1 additional team for every 20 licensed user. As I mentioned, there is the capability to be upgraded, but there are also some drawbacks. One of them is the size. The integrations and connectors, they might not exist, or even if they exist, it's quite expensive. Everything is connected to your team. And this is like one of the biggest drawback for Dataverse for Teams is the admins cannot control the creation of teams, right? So if I, as an end user, have access to the Power app, well, I can easily go and create an environment just for myself. The maximum number of teams with an attached Dataverse space is 500. More than that, you won't be able to do. Plus, the one that I've been saying maybe 3 or 4 times, bear in mind the change from teams to production environment will impact on a license change. Teams and users, probably E3 or E5, will need a Power App Premium license to access the Dataverse in the production environment, right? Remember, Dataverse for Teams is free. However, Dataverse, you have to pay for it. But then the question always comes like, Gökhan, fantastic. You have the Dataverse, but you also have SharePoint. Yes, lists, phenomenal, fantastic. And I love it. Like whenever I start a project, it's a basic thing. I always go with lists first, and you can use that. And here is like a comparison table just for you that you could use to understand what's the difference from type of data, number of data types, the common data model, capacity. You can see capacity SharePoint can go up to 30 million in a row. Dataverse is only like 1 million. However, Dataverse for Teams is unlimited. Security is the SharePoint one. This is a Teams one. And this is like you can even go up to item level permission and so on and so on. So this is one of those comparison tables that you as an admin, as a developer, or as a power user have to understand, propose it to your end users, and understand what the requirement is so you know in which path you should go. And this is like the final slide I'm going to share it with you. And this is my humble opinion. This is like what I think you guys should do. The use cases. Use SharePoint whenever you can afford small data. That's phenomenal for SharePoint. SharePoint can get slow when you have to update thousands of rows at the same time. SharePoint is fantastic for small data. SharePoint is phenomenal when you have like 10,000, 15,000 items. But when you go to the 100,000 of items, well, that's not always an easy task. Try to use Dataverse or Dataverse for Teams anytime. Dataverse is built directly on top of Power Apps, no API, no connector. It's the fastest, and the most reliable connector that you can find today. And then you definitely have the Azure SQL. My humble opinion is only use this if you have already invested into a lot of SQL Server infrastructure, right? Don't start with SQL if you have like a small piece of data just because SQL is cool. You have way more other options such as Dataverse for Teams, or SharePoint in order to do that. This was a 45, almost 50-minute talk without a single second of stop. I really hope that you have enjoyed this session, that you today understand that governance as well as storage is fundamental for your projects, and that Teams is a container for Power Apps. You can use the Power apps, you can use the Power Apps connector, you can use SharePoint and add your Power App as a web part and then bring that to your team. And you can also use the website app or the website connector and bring that Power App. So you have 4 different ways to bring your Power Apps to your team. And a final one, Database for Teams. If you create your app from Microsoft Teams with the Power Apps app, while it's completely for free, go up to 1 million row or 2 gigabyte of data, but you can bring that app into a tab and start using it. I hope that you have learned something today, that you will progress in your organization, that you will make phenomenal applications, that you will share the applications among different business units, and that you will share your knowledge with others, because we need you to make the world a better place with Microsoft 365. Thank you so much, and I'm looking forward to listen to the questions if we might have some.
Yeah, thank you, Gokhan, for a great presentation and demo. So now we'll get into the questions and answers part. So, should you wish to ask a question, please feel free to type it in the question window now. Our first question is, I use an app in Teams. Do all the members of a team must have a Power App license?
So if you use premium connectors, if you use premium services, then yes, you need to have a license. If you use Database for Teams, then no license is required. I have no idea on what kind of applications you develop, but in many scenarios, if you use the classic way of building Power Apps, yes, a license is most probably more than needed. And that's the reason why I'm telling, like, if you have that licensing questions, and if your application is for a small subset of people with not a lot of data, Database for Teams can be your best friend.
Perfect. So next question. I work for a non-profit. What would be the main limitations to use these tools combined with Power Automate? For example, before we have to start paying for the service.
So the question is, he's asking for use cases with Power Automate and Power Apps. So that's what I understand.
Yeah, looks like it.
Yeah. So you have a trillion of use cases for free. What I've been showing to new customers or to my end users is combining the power of Power Apps and Power Automate. So basically, within Dataverse for Teams, I build an application for Teams creation process, and then I have like small text inputs, a few buttons, and then when I click on a button, a Power Automate flow is running, and it creates my Teams environment from that specific Power App. A trillion of use cases, a million ways of building applications. But again, if you don't know where to start, just ping me offline and I can show you a few use cases that I've been showing to my customers and help you out bringing the best of both worlds.
Yeah, so the next question is, the Teams environments will be disabled after 90 days of inactivity. Is it the usage of an app in Teams a trigger for activity for the team environment?
It's the activity of the app, not from Teams. So remember, you can access the app from your team, from your mobile device, from the browser. It's the activity of the app. And basically, if your app is in Microsoft Teams, it's probably the same. So if the app is not being accessed for 90 days, that's probably the case.
Perfect. So next question, adding website tab in Teams will change the way it opens. So far it opens as an iframe, but from
Yes.
April onwards, Microsoft will change the behavior and open it in a browser window instead.
Probably. I'm not aware of that, but yes, probably. The thing is, the whole idea of this session is to show you that you have multiple ways on showcasing your Power App through connectors, through apps, through website, through SharePoint, through Database for Teams. And I'm not saying, and don't get me wrong, that this is the best way on showcasing your app. You have multiple ways of doing it. And the whole idea of today is to show you so you can pick one of the the solutions I'm showing to you to apply in your organization. And yes, probably you're right. Microsoft will change because the way on how it is. And I don't know if I'm still sharing, but here, and you're absolutely right. If I come to my team, and here you can see this is like horrible, and it says it doesn't load properly. But the option exists, and that's what I'm trying to explain to you. You have the way on doing this if for some reason the Power Up connector is blocked or the SharePoint connector is blocked.
Perfect. So just last question. Can you use a Power App build on Dataverse for Teams in a chat with multiple people?
I would say no, but that's a fantastic question. I never thought about this. So let me here. You guys can still see my screen, right?
Yeah, we can still see your screen.
If I go to my, that's a good question. I don't know, to be honest. I'm like 99% like no, but I have like that little percentage of doubt. I'm gonna say no. I'm not sure because I haven't seen any way on doing this in our environment. No, I don't think so. No. Well,
Perfect.
if
So
I
we'll
go,
just end it there.
yeah,
Oh,
just give me. Do we have like 1 minute? I really want to test this. So I
yeah,
have my group just
we have
here.
plenty of time.
I have my group just here, and if I just click on plus, if I go to not poly, come on. Here, if I click on Power Apps, do I see it here? That's a good question, to be honest. I'm just waiting. It's still loading. I don't see it in my apps. Do I see it in all apps? I don't see it here either. If I go to the model-driven app, no. Nope, I can see it. So 99.99 no, but still to be deeply checked. So I'm gonna say 99.99 no.
Okay, perfect. So on behalf of the ESPC community, we'd like to extend a big thank you to again, Gokhan, for taking the time to carry out this webinar. We really appreciate it. So that's the end of today's webinar. You can find this webinar and more at sharepointeurope.com/resource center. Thanks again to all of you for joining us today. I hope you join us again soon. Take care.